Hey guys, Ruminating Reaper here. So it's Saturday, fairly grey looking day, so perfect for going to the cinema. I'm about to head in to see Hamnet. Yes, this is with Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. Been hearing great things about this. This has been a particularly one that's come up a lot in relation to awards season conversation. Been hearing it's great. Hearing it is pretty devastating. So I probably should have brought a pack of tissues for this one. But I guess the only way to find out just how emotional it gets is to head in, get some snacks, and get seated for Hamnet.
Their pizza app today.
So, Hamnet. I am back from seeing it. This is directed by Chloe Zhao, director of Eternals and Nomadland. This is also co-written by Zhao and Maggie O'Farrell, who's actually adapting her own novel of the same name for the screen. The film is also produced, notably, by Steven Spielberg and Sam Mendes. So already that is quite the list of pedigree involved with this thing, and obviously it has come up a lot in relation to the forthcoming awards season, especially the Oscars. I heard a lot of great things about it, being quite emotional, especially with its quite interesting subject matter, obviously about the creation of Hamlet. So I went into this, fully ready to be moved. But does the film actually deliver on the emotional intensity of its compelling subject matter? Let's find out. So the film is set in 16th century Stratford, where a healer named Agnes and her husband, William Shakespeare, are both overjoyed by the birth of their son, Hamnet. However, tragedy strikes when Hamnet suddenly dies at a very young age, with the couple's relationship soon put to the test as they grapple with their individual ways of dealing with the tragedy, with Will in particular channeling it into his writing as he begins to use it as the basis for his latest play, The Tragedy of Hamlet. So obviously, going in, I had heard that this thing gets pretty emotional. And so obviously I went in with that in mind, fully ready for a heavier, more intense experience. But even with that in mind, I'd be lying if I said I still wasn't caught off guard by just how raw and intense this thing gets. Because, god damn, it really hits hard. Just a brilliant film. I think right out of the gate, my one issue is that the opening stretch is a bit slow to actually get going, and that's not to say it's bad per se, because there is stuff in it that is actually important to the overarching story. There's obviously allusions to myth and obviously all stuff about the plague, and even scenes exploring Agnes and Will and their relationships with their individual families. There's stuff that obviously does play a part in the story, but I feel like I didn't quite fully connect to that opening stretch. But I feel like once we actually start getting into Agnes and Will's relationship, it really does begin to find its footing and properly does begin to settle into its flow. I mean, it helps as well that the film obviously just fully immerses us in the settings. Obviously there is fantastic production design and costume design and just absolutely gorgeous cinematography, particularly these just beautiful woodland shots, and it all just really serves in bringing the period to life. And honestly, I really enjoyed this stretch, focusing on Agnes and Will and their family. There's a sort of quite gentle pace to these scenes, with really lovely character dynamics and little moments of humor sprinkled in there, and it is really well done. And so it means that when tragedy does strike, and believe me, it really does, it allows it to really hit, because goddamn, these scenes, obviously, yes, a notable one being the death of the titular character, it allows these scenes to have just such a raw intensity to them that just really hits hard. And it really hangs on to the characters and their grief and anguish and really sticks by that for quite long stretches, with really brilliantly done, unbroken takes and uncomfortable close-ups. Yeah, really locking us into the characters and the intensity of the tragedy that they face, and it is just brilliantly captured, especially enhanced by a score from Max Richter that only serves to enhance the quite emotionally tense atmosphere of these moments. It is just brilliantly done. But what I think really makes these scenes work are, of course, the performances, because across the board they are pretty damn great. Obviously, Jessie Buckley as Agnes, she is magnificent here. She really commands these scenes of these intense childbirth scenes and scenes of Agnes, confronting these moments of quite heavy tragedy. And there's scenes that obviously, yes, get quite intense and almost hard to watch, but they're equally hard to look away from because of the sheer intense magnetism of Buckley's performance, and really allows the heavy emotion to really hit. I would not be shocked to see her name listed among the Best Actress nominees when the Oscar nominations inevitably go live. She is just fantastic here. And Paul Mescal as Will is also brilliant. I've very much been on the Mescal train ever since After Sun, and yeah, he continues to prove me right with his work here. He's just brilliant as someone who obviously struggles to communicate with people, but rather finds that voice in his writing and his stories. And there's a very interesting thing about how he channels that grief and that anguish into his writing and very much absorbs himself in his work. It's very, very interesting stuff. And yeah, Mescal is great here. And there are other very strong performances here, including Emily Watson as Mary, Will's mother, and Joe Alwyn as Bartholomew, Agnes's brother. But a particular highlight that I have to give credit to here is Jacoby Jupe as the titular character, because goddamn, in those scenes he brings such an emotion. It really, allows his scenes to truly hit hard and brings such a level of intensity to that. Quite frankly, this might just be one of the best child performances I have ever seen. He is fantastic, and I have to give full credit here for that. And obviously, a really interesting thing is how the story evolves. Obviously, carried along by the characters and the fantastic performances, very much focusing in on the emotion of the film. But I really enjoyed seeing how it shifts to obviously see the beginnings and the creative formation of the actual Hamlet play. And obviously, yes, in these final stretches, obviously some of its, thematic ideas and its visuals do tie themselves together really wonderfully. But even on a surface level, the actual performance of the play itself is just simply magnetic and works thanks to such a level of command in the material. And obviously, when you're doing like a performance within a performance, it's obviously quite a difficult thing to pull off and make it, feel compelling and make it feel exciting to watch on the screen. But they really pulled it off here. I was damn near on the edge of my seat for that final stretch of the film. It is brilliant. But what really makes it work is, again, the emphasis on the characters and the emotion, particularly Agnes, and the fantastic performance of Jessie Buckley, and allows the film to deliver a really moving conclusion that is fully open and earnest in its approach in a way that you could only get from an Amblin production. And By the end, I could hear at least one sniffle from the audience of my showing. Like, yeah, it really, really hits hard. Just such an intense experience. Overall, Hamnet is a really moving drama that works thanks to the raw, intense emotion on display and the fantastic performances from Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. See it on the big screen. It hits even harder with a crowd. Out of 10, Hamnet gets a 9. So, let me know down in the comments. Have you seen Hamnet? What did you think of it? If you're someone who has read the book, do you think it did justice to the source material? What did you think of Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal's performances? And do you think we will see at least one of them land an Oscar nomination for their work here? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.